for taking the time. How are things going so far?
Going great. The feedback has been tremendous. People are excited, and I think so far, what we're seeing is hunger for something different. And I think that's what we've been delivering throughout my time at the state auditor's office and when I was at the AG's office. And so people have noticed that and figured out that it is what it is and really like it.
Can you talk a little bit about the logo behind you and the significance of it? I mean,
I can.
yes.
I think that people are sick of division. I think people are sick of both parties endlessly throwing barbs at each other. And so we've got a handshake and we've got the idea of governor for all, because I think that's what the governor is supposed to do, is represent all Iowans and try to bring people together, not divide them.
Can you talk a little bit about you said that you don't want, it's not about bluer or redder, it's about making Iowa truer and better. What exactly do you mean? I mean, what is not true now that needs to be truer and better in what way?
Well, I just think that too much of politics is reflexive opposition to the other party and reflexive support of one's own party. It is one of the dumbest parts of American politics today, and it's happening in Iowa. They gutted the auditor's office.
Mhm.
They gutted the auditor's office. I mean, how much more crazy can you get, right? People are struggling with higher costs. Our economy is 49th in the country. Our state revenue has collapsed. They gutted the auditor's office. That's where their priorities are. It makes no sense. And I think it's the kind of stuff that people are sick of.
You have talked about how you're not a party line guy, and I've seen at your town halls where you talk about how you have this tripartisan leadership team and you promoted people who contributed to your opponent. Do you have any kind of an idea in mind or a target of Republicans or independents that you would hire to your administration if you're elected governor? I mean, would you be putting Republicans in charge of some state agencies potentially?
Absolutely. And if I named people that I was interested in putting in charge right now today, you would see their careers immediately end. So I can't go out and name them, but there's a good number of people that I think are people of good faith that are trying to solve problems, that are trying to do right, that happen to have a different letter behind their name. And that really is the bottom line to me. I want to work with people who are trying to do good. And I would rather work with people who are trying to do good that might be in the other party than work with people who don't care about solving problems, who are just trying to win a fight and aren't trying to actually serve anyone, even if they happen to be in my own party.
One thing I've heard you talk about on the road is your office's policy on letting people work remotely, letting people work from anywhere in the state if they'd prefer to live in a small town or another part of the state. Is that something that you could see expanding to other state agencies, just more flexibility and people being able to work from anywhere?
Yes.
And you think that that would improve? Do you think that, I mean, in what way would that improve the operations of state government?
Oh, so look, I think it's easy for state government to get disconnected from the people who pay the bills. And I think there's few places where people are more connected to each other than in small towns and rural areas, right? If we have more state jobs and state employees living in small towns and rural areas, they're going to have a better level of an idea of what's going on and how people are thinking and feeling across the state. The bigger piece of that, though, to me is, Lori, who are we serving? And the answer to that should be, again, all Iowans. If you want to serve all Iowans, why would you concentrate all the jobs for state government in the parts of the state that are already the most prosperous, right? That doesn't make sense to me. We should want to have jobs in rural Iowa and in small towns because that allows people to live there. When I was growing up in Decorah, I remember the conversations that I would overhear as a kid. If a business closed down or if a family left town, it was a big deal. Meanwhile, Eric Svetska, who was a year or two behind me in high school, just moved back to Decorah to be a doctor, and they put up a billboard, right? I haven't seen a billboard up to welcome any one specific family to the Des Moines Metro in my entire life. It means more for those smaller communities to have them growing.
And has that improved employee retention in your office to be able to let people work from anywhere?
Look, I can't, here's what I can say about it. I can give you an example where it has improved retention. Yeah, because we've got someone right now who, Chris, who lives in, I think he's in Burlington, but he's in Southwest Iowa. Nope, sorry, Fort Madison. He's in Fort Madison. And he was able to come back and begin again working at this office after having left because we now allow people to live anywhere. I can also give you an example of someone that we lost because we let her move to Mount Pleasant. But again, that too is a good thing because she then took over for a local auditing firm. And so by us letting her go there, that means that there was a local auditing firm that is probably today still in business that might otherwise not be in Mount Pleasant. And that's good for Mount Pleasant. So even if it's not necessarily 100% always just us benefiting, it's the whole state of Iowa benefiting. And that's kind of the idea, even if it's at our expense.
A couple of minutes ago, you mentioned the state revenues collapsing. You issued a statement last week on this fiscal time bomb. I mean, what's your plan? It seems like everything that's leading to this fiscal disaster is locked into place with the school voucher spending exploding, with the state revenues. I mean, the American Rescue Plan federal money is going to be running out. I mean, what would you be able to do as governor to avert this time bomb from going off?
I think there's a couple of very simple answers to that. Number one, treat marijuana the same way that we treat alcohol.
Mhm,
Our dollars in the state of Iowa are leaving the state and going to fund state governments of all of our neighboring states because people go there to get what they want.
mhm,
Number two, efficiency.
mhm.
We started a government efficiency program in my first term that has been copied in other states because it's so good at saving money. We have this pile of money and the surplus just sitting there. We could be using that to actually implement efficiency practices that would pay off down the line when that surplus, because of the collapse in state revenue, has disappeared. And so that's another way that we could help ease the burden of taxes in the state of Iowa.
So you really think there's that much in savings that could be gained through efficiency in state government? I mean, we're talking this coming year, we're going to be spending $900 million more than we're taking in revenue, roughly.
Those are two examples, right? So the two examples that would give us get us a long way of getting all the way there.
Mhm,
We also know that this is part of the plan for the surplus was they were going to use it to make uh, tax cuts that sound good, even if they're mostly going to wealthy Iowans, without also having the responsibility of making the corresponding spending cuts. That's why we're doing this, because they basically have just done the popular things like politicians do without doing the unpopular but necessary things. Personal responsibility is something they like to talk about, not something they like to actually implement for themselves. And so, yes, we're going to have some of that surplus, but treating marijuana the same way we treat alcohol and efficiency measures would all go a long way towards fixing that.
And there may be a couple of state constitutional amendments on the ballot next year that are related to taxes. One would put in the Constitution that we have to have a flat income tax, and then the other one would require a legislative supermajority to raise income or corporate taxes, but not to raise sales or use taxes. What do you have a position on either of those constitutional amendments?
I want to read the language of both of them first, and I haven't read the language of both of them.
Mhm,
Sometimes there's a word in there that is there for a very specific purpose, and so you can say one thing when really the text of it means another.
mhm.
And a part of what I want to get to in this campaign is, call me crazy, a kind of public service where facts matter and where words matter, as opposed to just a knee-jerk reaction to things.
Mhm. You have talked a lot about faith in your public appearances. It's something that I've written about. I think a few weeks ago you went to the prayer breakfast. Is that right?
I
Did
go to the prayer breakfast every year, and I
every
was
year.
there a few weeks ago. Yeah.
How are you received there in that audience? I mean, that it seems like there is a very specific vision of Christianity that's celebrated at that kind of event. And I'm just curious to know what it's like for you to attend.
I would say this way. There are people there who are very welcoming, who I think their heart is right. And I think there are people there who are very disappointed to see me because they aren't really focused on the right things. And I will let everyone who sees me at the prayer breakfast judge through their own reaction which of those camps they fall into.
I saw that you shared on your social media that video from the Iowa Senate gallery of the people the angry people that they didn't debate the eminent domain bill, and then the Senate president banging down her gavel and saying, "This is our house." Do you have a position on if the Senate should debate that eminent domain private property rights? And if so, if they debated, do you have a position on that bill or in general about the CO2 pipeline?
Sure, they absolutely should have a vote. I think this is one of the fundamental problems with our democracy, right? We force people to choose between the lesser of two evils. I believe that the Democratic and the Republican parties don't solve enough problems to deserve their shared monopoly, period. And this is a great example of it. Even though there's a fairly widespread belief that one of these bills would pass if it was allowed to have a debate, you have just a couple of people up there effectively blocking democracy from happening.
Mhm.
Now, so should you have a vote on those bills? Yeah, I think more bills should get votes. Let me tell you a funny story about this. I was in a youth something or other where you came down to Des Moines for a day. I think we were all seniors in high school. Maybe it was 2 days. And you sort of did like the Iowa student legislature. And I remember they divided us into two parties. And the way that we had decided it was, well, this party will have the first bill that comes up for a vote because they're the bigger one. And the smaller party can bring up a vote that they want. And we'll vote on that too. And it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that, of course, it's going to pass, but we're going to have votes on the bills from both sides. And one of the adults that was a legislator explained the way it was supposed to work to us by saying, "Oh, you don't understand. The majority party, they can just decide all the bills that get the vote. They don't have to let the other guys have a vote at all. And so that's the way you're supposed to do it." This is like such an illustration of how wrong-headed so much of our politics are today. Here we were, 17 and 18-year-olds from around the state of Iowa being like, "Oh, well, one for you, one for us, one for you, one for us. That seems fair." And they're coming in telling us, "No, no, 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 use all the power to do all what you want and don't let them do anything." This is the kind of stuff that drives Iowans crazy, Lori.
Right. So, but as in terms of the specifics of the pipeline bills, I mean, do you think that eminent domain should be allowed for this kind of a CO2 pipeline project?
Uh, I haven't read the bills, and again, I do think that words matter. I was a prosecutor for 7 years. I had to read every piece of code very closely to make sure that what I was doing was appropriate and legal. I haven't read the bills that are up there, so as those bills stand, I don't have a clear answer for you, but I do think that those that are concerned about eminent domains are pretty fair in their concerns.
If you're elected governor, will you ask the legislature to repeal Senate File 478? And would you sign a repeal?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely.
For those who don't know, that's the bill that gutted the state auditor's office. And yes, I will ask them to repeal it. And yes, I would sign a repeal. And I bet that if there were a governor in the other party, all of a sudden they would be very interested in accountability.
I want to ask a few things about the campaign. Do you plan to endorse in any of the other Democratic primaries? There are a few people running for office who you've worked closely with in the past in the Democratic Party, or are you going to be staying out of the other primaries?
I don't plan to today. And
Okay,
and what I mean by that is I'm not planning to.
right.
If something were to happen, something fairly extraordinary, that could change. But
And are you still, I don't know what ever happened with the Iowa Democratic Party with that executive committee. Are you still part of regular meetings with that, or what's happening with that?
great question for someone at the party.
Okay. Have you started thinking about what qualities you might be looking for in a running mate if you were the nominee? Or have you had any meetings with anybody yet about
No,
that? Okay.
we're a year away from that, I think.
Yes. And can you comment on this question about the money that you raised from family members? And this is something that clearly Republicans are
Sure.
going to, we haven't had a tradition of self-funding candidates in Iowa as much as some other states have. And what would you say to any Iowans, not just Democrats, who are concerned about a candidate who's getting so much money from one family?
Look, I had 28,000 contributions that were grassroots contributions in 2024. So many of them that it broke the state's machine for filing your reports. All of my campaigns have had record-setting grassroots small dollar contributions because people, whether they're my family or they're not my family, they see my approach to things, they hear what I say, and they go, "That guy wants to do things different. He's more focused on right versus wrong. I like that." I'm proud to have that level of grassroots support from Iowans across the entire state. Republicans want to yell about the support for my family. My family, look, I guess at the end of the day, Lori, this race will be really between two candidates, one of whom their biggest donor is their family, who knows them really well and trusts them to do the right thing. The other one's going to be have their biggest donor be special interest groups that want a chunk of tax dollars. I know which one I would prefer.
Is there anything that I didn't ask about that you think is important for my readers to know about you, about your campaign?
No, I don't think so.
All right.